basically, what we're learning is all about the law of lulav in the Beis Hamikdash and lulav outside of the Beis Hamikdash on Shabbos. How does that work? So what we said was that the lulav sometimes is taken all 7 days, is waived 7 days. Now, if lulav is waived 7 days, obviously it means it's waived on Shabbos. That means it's doiche Shabbos. It pushes off Shabbos. And what was the case? The case that the Mishnah mentioned was a case that if the first day falls on Shabbos, it will override the Shabbos laws and you will waive the lulav on Shabbos. And if it falls on any other day, it will not override the Shabbos. Now, the Gemara is bothered with, well, what exactly does it mean that waiving the lulav overrides Shabbos? What sin are you doing by waiving a lulav? That it needs to override the Shabbos. There's no sin. What's the sin? A rabbinic sin? So there's a question about that. Like the rabbi said not to touch muktzah, not to touch things that have no use on Shabbos. So the lulav, you could say, is not really a kli, is not a vessel. Maybe a question, maybe we can't really do it. But in truth, I mean, if the Torah says you have to shake the lulav, the rabbis come along in general and say that we have to prohibit things that are of no use, that you shouldn't move. It's called muktzah. So it doesn't seem that we would need to make a whole big deal that the lulav is overriding the Shabbos. And maybe on the other days, it's not going to override Shabbos. This is not much of a comparison here. It doesn't seem in the same league. This is a biblical law. Of course, we have to fulfill the biblical law of Shabbos, of lulav, and we have to shake the lulav. We wave the lulav. Yeah, we're not going to touch muktzah, but it would seem surprising that we would not be allowed to wave the lulav if Shabbos fell on one of the other days of Sukkot. That sounds very surprising. Shabbos on the first day, the Mishnah says it does override the Shabbos. That makes sense. What about the other days? The other days it's not going to override Shabbos because why? Because of tiltul, because there's a rabbinic law against touching things that have no real use, that aren't really vessels and utensils. Does it make sense that the rabbis would have made their law so strict that the Mishnah says there's some years that we can only do lulav 6 days instead of 7 days? So that's the Gemara's question. Tiltul biyamahu lidchu Shabbos. It's for sure lidchi Shabbos. It for sure should override Shabbos. The rabbis aren't gonna. They're not gonna. The rabbis maybe they do have the ability to make such a prohibition, but would they have to just tell you muktzah? We're going to tell you don't do the mitzvah because of muktzah. Would the rabbis have done that? The rabbis have the ability to oiker davar min haTorah, to stop you from doing a mitzvah. They have that ability if there's a reason, a good reason. But muktzah doesn't seem like one of those type of severe reasons that the rabbis would go out of their way to ruin a biblical mitzvah. So the Gemara answers, no, it's not about muktzah. You know what it's about? It's about transgressing a biblical law of carrying. Now, I just made it very simple. I called it carrying. But really, the term the Gemara uses is ha'avara. Ha'avara, passing something 4 amos, 4 cubits in the public domain. Ha'avara. There's a term also called hoitza'ah. And both of these, in English, we often just say carrying. What are you not allowed to do on Shabbos? What is one of the famous prohibitions on Shabbos when there's no Eruv? Is that you're not allowed to carry something there are two categories. One category is carrying something daled amis 4 cubits in a public domain. You lifted it, you carried it 4 cubits, like 6 to 8 feet, and you put it down in a public domain. That's a problem. That's a transgression of biblical prohibition. It's a capital punishment. It's a very serious prohibition of carrying. Now, there's another category of carrying, and that's called hoitza'a merishus l'rishus, taking it out from one domain and entering it into another domain. And that would be, for example, taking your lulav from your house and walking into the street with it, especially a very busy street that has 600,000 people, or then it's 16 amos. It's 30 around somewhere between 16 amos would be somewhere between 24 and 32 feet wide, a decent sized street, and it's 600,000 people living in that area that would go on that street on a daily basis. And so if that's so, that would be a public domain. So if you took it from your house into the public domain, you didn't walk 4 amos, 4 cubits with it in the public domain. You just entered the public domain. That would be called hoitza'a. That would also be a transgression of carrying. So we've got two categories of carrying. The Gemara's term here is ha'avara, that you're going to carry it 4 cubits in the public domain. And of course, all the commentaries here are bothered. Well, what about the fact that you're taking it out of your house and bringing it into the street? Isn't that a problem? That we're not worried about. It's when you get to the street, you might walk 6 to 8 feet with it. That's what we're worried about. What about the fact that you left your house with your lulav to go find some expert or a rabbi who's going to teach you how to shake it or how to say the bracha? So what about that point? That the Gemara doesn't seem to mention. It only mentions the one category of prohibition of Shabbos. So Rashi is bothered with this, and the Tues and all the commentaries. Rashi says that it really could have mentioned the hoitza'a problem, but he says many times you don't have to worry about the hoitza'a, because going from one domain to another domain has certain qualifications. For example, a lot of domains are not really considered a biblical problem, because a lot of domains are considered Carmelis, Gina, there's gardens, there's a Carmelis, so somewhere in between, which is not a private domain, not a public domain. So when you walk from your house to a Carmelis, that's not considered a biblical prohibition. And the issue you would have is really going into a public domain and walking daled amos. That's where you really have an issue. But basically, the way Rashi seems to be explaining his answer is that the hoitza'a problem is less often. The ha'avara, that's where you have a problem, and that's where it's more often. And Rashi says, yesh lachosh, there's many places where you have to worry of ha'avara, what our Gemara says, ha'avaras arba amas, ve'ein lachosh l'hoitza'a. You're not worried about hoitza'a. There's not an issue of hoitza'a, because if it was placed in a Carmelis, it wasn't placed in your house. But hoitza'a, but the havara you'll have, because you did walk 6 feet or 8 feet in the public domain. That you'll have. But let's say it was placed in a Carmelis, and then you took it from there to the street to walk with. There, you're not going to have a problem. Then Rashi gives another example that if you lifted it up and didn't plan on taking it into another domain, and then you said, oh, let me go to the rabbi. So then you changed your mind after you already lifted it up. So then it would be considered that you did not do a akira. You didn't remove it from its place with the same intention with the intention of going from one domain to another. But walking in the street with it after you lifted it up and you did an akira, you just didn't do an akira that's a prohibited akira, that you would be responsible for when it comes to carrying. So what Rashi is telling us, according to the way he understands this, in other words, it's a debate in the Rishonim. It's a debate in the laws of Shabbos about lifting something without planning on removing it from one domain to another, but then walking with it dalet amos in the public domain. Will that constitute what's called an akira, the original lifting and the final placing down together with the walking? Can you attach all three of those? In order to be responsible for carrying, you need to have three things: lift it up, to pick it up from somewhere or take it from somewhere, and you have to put it down somewhere, and you have to carry it. Now, according to Rashi, the actual lifting up doesn't necessarily have to be a lifting up with a sinning intention. It doesn't have to be that you planned on doing the whole act when it comes to carrying in the public domain. When it comes to carrying from one domain to another, then you need to have an akira with that intention. You have to plan on taking it from this domain to the next domain. But if you're just carrying it in the Rishus HaRabim, public domain, then it would be.
Hello.
That's Rashi's two answers to this problem. Okay, so getting back to the Gemara. So the Gemara mentioned that this is a famous Gezerah of Rabbah. I mean, the Gemara didn't say famous, but I'm just mentioning it is a famous. This is the Gezerah of Rabbah about carrying on, about not doing a mitzvah. The rabbis told us not to do certain mitzvahs that are biblical, that could or even be biblical, because we're afraid you might carry. And this Gezerah of Rabbah, this Gezerah that Rabbah tells us about, that the rabbis made such a decree, it applies in a few places. It applies to Shofar, it applies to Megillah, and it applies to Lulav. And we are very familiar with all of these because we practice this Gezerah that we don't blow Shofar on Rosh Hashanah. It sounds surprising, but we don't do it if it falls on Shabbos. We don't read the Megillah if it falls on Shabbos. Purim falls on Shabbos, like this year in the big city, in the city, the walled cities. We didn't read the Megillah, and as we're learning the lulav, if first day falls, if Shabbos, any of the days that falls that of Sukkot, that Shabbos falls on Shabbos, we don't shake the lulav, and so we follow that. Of course, all the commentaries talk about other cases as well. What about Mila? Mila, maybe the Rabbah should have told us about Mila. Maybe there should be a Gezerah about not doing a bris Mila on Shabbos. Maybe the moil's going to carry, and there's just a rabbim the knife for the bris Mila. And there's questions about what about the Seder? We shouldn't have the Seder on Shabbos because it falls on Shabbos. We shouldn't do the Seder because maybe someone's going to carry carry something to the Rav. Question of how much matzah he has to eat, what bracha to say on the matzah. I don't know. So the moirar, and maybe someone will carry. So these are common questions that are discussed by the commentaries. Why does this Zera? Why do we only know it in these three areas, and why is it not applicable to other areas? Yeah, it is interesting in Hasidic writings. It does mention about how it's shocking to think Rosh Hashanah, especially Rosh Hashanah. This is the most There's such a powerful mitzvah, blowing the shofar. I mean, it's like the way we are able to reach the highest levels, pierce the heavens. The shofar is a powerful, powerful idea, which, of course, on a simple level, maybe the shofar people don't understand. Blowing some ram's horn, how does that do anything? But on a spiritual level, the shofar is a very powerful mitzvah. On we do it on Rosh Hashanah. I mean, it's not a small thing. This is the head of the year. We're being judged for the whole year. We're blowing the shofar, and all of a sudden the rabbis come along and say, you know what? The biggest thing about Rosh Hashanah to shofar, don't blow. Why? Because some guy might not know how to blow. He's going to walk in the street. So some idiot is going to go on the street. We'll make all the rabbis can't blow the shofar because one guy is going to make a mistake, or a few people that don't know any better. So does it sound right that we shouldn't blow the shofar because of this? How do you understand this type of gzeira? So in Hasidic writings, it says that really there's a deeper concept here as well, and that is that really Shabbos accomplishes what the shofar accomplishes, meaning that the Gezerah, of course, is a true Gezerah, but the rabbis understood that really, because it's Shabbos, we're able to accomplish, at least on a certain level, the concept, the spiritual concept of what the shofar does. The holiness of Shabbos is able to let us pierce the heavens like the shofar. And so therefore, the rabbis could make such a gzeira. In other words, they're not totally taking away the mitzvah from us, because the Shabbos actually does have, in other words, the greatness of Shabbos really does reach the heavens and accomplish the, at least to some extent, a similar extent to what we would accomplish if we blew the shofar, we shook the lulav, or read the Megillah. So the Shabbos accomplishes that. In the Beis Hamikdash, maybe was actually a greater level, and therefore in the Beis Hamikdash it wasn't Doicha Shabbos. Beis Hamikdash, certain things were not. We didn't push it off. We would do it on Shabbos, but outside of the Beis Hamikdash, the Shabbos is able to accomplish that same level that the shofar accomplishes. Anyway, so the bottom line is that the Gemara was surprised that the Mishnah says that you don't shake the lulav even in the Beis Hamikdash on Shabbos, unless it falls on the first day. All the other days you don't shake it on Shabbos. And the conclusion, the Gemara says, yeah, the reason is because we're afraid someone's going to carry it, which also shows us how careful we are, responsibility we have for every single yid. Even some guy is going to carry the lulav. None of us wave the lulav. Why? Because we have to worry about someone else's mitzvah. Someone else might end up sinning. And so we have to be careful. We don't want to cause someone to carry on Shabbos. Okay, so the Gemara then said that if there's such a worry that someone's going to carry, then why on the first day does it override Shabbos? Even on the first, if the first day falls on Shabbos, even then, we should say, don't wave the lulav. If it falls on Shabbos, don't wave the lulav that day. Wait till the next day. So the Gemara answers to that. The Gemara says that the rabbis have already, if you remember the Mishnah, it said that there was a whole story. People would fight when the first day falls on Shabbos. The rabbis said that everyone should shake lulav at home. So because the rabbis said you're supposed to shake the lulav at home, so the understanding is no one's going to make a mistake and leave their house to go find the rabbi, because there's such a gezerah that you have to do it at home. So you'll remember when you're about to leave, you'll remember, I can't carry on Shabbos. In other words, what we're concerned about is someone's going to end up being so nervous about the mitzvah that they'll end up carrying on Shabbos. Transgress a biblical prohibition. The first day of Sukkot, we're not worried about that. Why aren't we worried? We're not worried because the rabbis made a decree that you have to shake the lulav at home. That's a very unique thing. It's Yom Tov, and yet we're going to tell you shake the lulav in your house. That is going to remind you that you're not allowed to carry. So you're not going to make this mistake because there's a dakana to shake it in your house. In other words, my point, what I'm getting at is we're worried about a guy carrying. He's going to his rabbi. So just because the rabbi's made a decree to shake it in your house, why should that help that some idiot is not going to go to his rabbi to find out how to say the bracha or how to shake it, which directions to shake it? Well, how is this going to help that? The fact that the rabbis made a takana, on the first day of Sukkot, if it falls on Shabbos, you got to shake the lulav in your house. Now, I understand the rabbis made that decree. They made that decree because there was a whole fights that were going on in the Beis Hamikdash. They said, you know what, shake it in your house and don't bring it to shul. You can't, should not before Yom Tov, not on Yom Tov, and not on Shabbos. Shake it in your house. The first day, you're just doing it in your house. Okay, that makes sense. But how does that get us around the problem of some guy might not know how to shake it? He might end up going. So Rashi is bothered with this question. How does it really answer? Rashi says that once, because the rabbis made such a decree, it actually it removes the worry that someone's going to carry it, because since they made a decree, shake it in your house. So before you step outside, you're going to remember, oh, I'm not supposed to be going outside, because like you feel like there's some decree over here. I have to shake it in the house. It's going to make you remember that. That's going to help you remember. You're not going to make this mistake. So on the first day, there's no reason to make a mistake. However, the other days you might make a mistake, and therefore the rabbis made a decree that no lulav on Shabbos. You might carry it in the public domain. So the Gemara says, what about before they made the decree, before there was that fight in the Beis Hamikdash? Before that fight took place in the Beis Hamikdash, what about before that? We should be worried that people are going to carry it on Shabbos. There's no decree about shaking the lulav at home, and people are going to end up finding out about how to wave it, how to say the bracha. They're going to carry it on Shabbos. So even the first day, at least before the decree, we should not be allowed to shake the lulav on Shabbos. So the Gemara's answer to that was that we must say a different understanding. What's the understanding? That it's not because of the takana, not because the rabbis made a takana, because then what about before the decree that the rabbis made about the fight that took place in the Beis Hamikdash? There's a different reason. What's the reason? The first day is a very serious biblical law. Even outside of the Beis Hamikdash, you have to shake the lulav. Oh, such a serious law. The rabbi said, we're not going to override that. We're not going to override that. We're going to let you shake it on Shabbos, on the first day, because not only do you have a mitzvah, a biblical mitzvah in the Beis Hamikdash, even outside of the Beis Hamikdash is a biblical mitzvah, and therefore the rabbis did not want to override it. It's a very severe mitzvah, very serious, I should say, very serious and important mitzvah, integral, and therefore the rabbis didn't decree about we're afraid someone's going to carry. They didn't say that on the first day. But the other days where we only wave the lulav in the Beis Hamikdash, there the rabbi said when it falls on Shabbos, just don't do it. Don't do it. It falls on Shabbos, you can't do it. Those days are not as serious, as strict as because even outside of the Beis Hamikdash, we don't do it anyway. So the Gemara asks, so Gemara asks, if so, if that's true, why today do we should override the Shabbos and shake lulav on the first day if it falls on Shabbos? The Gemara answers that we don't know outside of Israel, you're outside of Yerushalayim, we don't know when the actual day is of Yom Tov because we do Kiddush HaChodesh and they have a testimony on the day and we don't get the information till much later, so we sometimes are off a day about what day Yom Tov is. So it's possible what's going to happen is it's possible it's not Yom Tov, and what's going to happen is someone's going to be waving our lulav on Shabbos, and someone might carry it, and really it's not the mitzvah. So it's not the mitzvah. Someone might end up carrying it. So therefore, we do not do it if we don't know for sure. But in Yerushalayim, where they do know exactly when Yom Tov is, we know this is the first day of Yom Tov. So then, Enochanami, in places where they do know, they actually do shake the lulav on Shabbos if it falls on the first day. Again, the other days is not as strict, but the first day is strict. But it has to be a place where they know what day is Yom Tov. In any such place, it doesn't have to be the Beis Hamikdash, even outside the Beis Hamikdash. They know that it's Yom. They know that it's Yom Tov. They shake the lulav even on Shabbos. And the Gemara proves it because of two Mishnayos. One Mishnah says that the first day they would bring the lulavim in advance to the Harabayas. That was our Mishnah. And also there's another Mishnah where it says that they would bring it to the Beis HaKnesses before Shabbos. So you see that in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, they bring the Beis HaMikdash. And when there's no Beis HaMikdash, they still bring it. You still override the Shabbos. Why are they bringing it to Shul and leaving it there? It must be because the Yom Tov overrides Shabbos on the first day. The lulav overrides the Shabbos, and where if it's the first day, we shake the lulav at least as long as you know what day Yom Tov is. Okay. And now we're up to the new Gemara. So we're on page 43a. And the Gemara says, "43a," and we're going to start from the Isay min HaTorah bigvulen minolan. This is probably, let's see, 15 lines from the top is my guess. 5, 10, 15, maybe about 17 lines from the top of the page. The Isay minat, page 43a. 43a, the Isay min HaTorah bigvulen minolan. So how do we know that there's an obligation, at least on the first day, to shake the lulav even outside of Israel? How do we know that? Even outside of the Beis Hamikdash, excuse me. Even outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Bigvulen. How do we know that you have to shake it? Maybe it's only in the Beis Hamikdash. So the Gemara brings the pasuk, the Tanya, because it was taught in a brisa. It says that it says ulakachtem plural. You should take, so it means everyone takes, not just the bezdin, and not just one person being might see other people. Different ways of understanding what the Gemara is getting at, but basically every person has the mitzvah to take. And then it says lachem has to be yours, and that we've learned already that you can't be yoitza with a borrowed or a stolen lulav. And then it says bayoim has to be, well, it's bayom harishon. You take it on the first day, and the Gemara understands it means even b'Shabbos. It says on the first day. Bayoim. Now, Then it says that it says Rishon and really says Harishon. So Rishon, the Yom Harishon. So what does Rishon mean? Afilu begvulen. Because it just says that you got to take it on the first day. It doesn't limit it to the Beis Hamikdash. So we understand it to mean anywhere, wherever you live. And the fact that it says a hey, Harishon on the first day, this teaches us that when is Lulav doicha the Shabbos? When is it override the Shabbos? So it teaches us the fact that it says a hey, Harishon Melamed, she'enoi doicha ela yom tov Harishon bavad, that it only overrides the first day of Yom Tov. In other words, the letter Hey tells you that that it overrides the Shabbos is only on the first day, but on the other days it doesn't override Shabbos. It overrides Shabbos on the first day. So that's the brisa. What do we learn from this brisa? So what we learn from the brisa is that the mitzvah of shaking lulav is not limited to the Beis Hamikdash. Applies even begvulin, even outside of the Beis Hamikdash, and that's basically what we learn. It applies in all places, at least on the first day. The end of the pasuk says Beis Hamikdash you did it all 7 days, but the mitzvah that you shake the lulav on the first day, even outside of Beis Hamikdash, that you see from this pasuk. It's the main pasuk about lulav. So we see that that doesn't limit it to weekday. It's even on Shabbos. Okay, now comes the next piece of Gemara. Amar Mar, Master said. So it says by Yoim Afilu b'Shabbos. Afilu b'Shabbos. It says by Yoim. So we learned from there. We're just quoting what we just read. We're quoting what we just said. And that was that by Yoim teaches you even on Shabbos. Now it didn't really mean because the words by Yoim. What it really just means is because there's no exclusion. We're automatically going to assume all days. That's really what the Gemara says. Not like an extra word there or an extra letter. The fact is, it says take it on the Yom HaRishon, Pri-Eitz Hadar, Kapi Svar. It says take all the 4 species. So we're basically going to include the Shabbos. There's no reason to exclude it. So the Gemara says, Michti Tilto B'Yamahu. Let's see. This is just carrying. So Israch Kwala Mishri Tilto. You really need a pasuk to permit this? Like what exactly are we permitting? So the Gemara explains, what the brisa is permitting, because it is a surprising brisa in a certain sense. It's telling you that the brisa teaches you that it overrides Shabbos. The first day, or you don't really need a brisa for that. The fact that it overrides Shabbos is sort of obvious, as we started off with. Like there's no nothing that's stopping you from assuming you can shake the lulav. The pasuk is going to tell you that you can override. There's no biblical law against it on Shabbos. So how could a pasuk, biblical pasuk, tell you that you can you can do this on Shabbos? You don't need a pasuk to tell you. It's obvious. There's nothing against it. Yes, Mordechai. Oh, I thought you were asking. Okay, so the Gemara says you need a pasuk to allow you against muktzah. The pasuk is only telling you that you're allowed to cut the lulav off the tree on Shabbos. You could tie it on Shabbos. All of these are called machshirei mitzvah. They are preparations, preps for the mitzvah. They prepare the mitzvah. Got to cut the tree, the lulav off the tree. You got to tie the branches with the lulav. And the Gemara says, "Tana," and it goes like that. Tana, famous Tana, Rabbi Eliezer, that talks about bris milah. That he says bris milah, you're allowed that the machshirei milah are doicha Shabbos. Not only are you allowed to do a milah on Shabbos if the baby is born naturally and through natural means, regular pregnancy, the bris is supposed to be on the 8th day, even if it's on Shabbos. So Rabbi Eliezer comes along and says, not only is the bris doicha Shabbos, normally you're not allowed to make a cut on Shabbos, but not only is the bris doicha Shabbos, but Rabbi Eliezer says that even the machshirei milah, even carry the sharpen the knife and carry it, and who knows, you could prepare the bris for the bris on Shabbos, the doicha Shabbos. All these things are the doicha Shabbos, the machshirim. So here also for lulav, you're allowed to prepare the lulav for the mitzvah. This is the same Rabbi Eliezer. He's famous for his. The machshirim are always permitted. The preps are the preparations, preparation activities, the preliminaries. They're permitted also on Shabbos. They override Shabbos. The Tanya, as it was taught in a brayso, lulav v'chol machshirav doichen as Shabbos. Different Rabbi Eliezer. It says the lulav and all the preliminaries, the preparations for the mitzvah of lulav are all doicha Shabbos. They all override Shabbos. So that was one interpretation. I'm sorry. That was the reason why the brayso permits lulav on Shabbos, because it's not permitting lulav, it's permitting the machshirei lulav. So that's what we just permitted. We just permitted the machshirei lulav are permitted on Shabbos. My time of the Rebbe Eliezer, what's his reason? Why is it permitted? So it's Amakra by Yoim, Bafilo b'Shabbos. So Gemara says that what's the source? What is the source of Rabbi Eliezer? You permit the preparations for the mitzvah. So he says, you know what? It says by Yoim. Now, this word is really extra. I just want to correct something. I'm not sure if I said this right. I think I did, but I might. I'm thinking now that maybe just in case I said it wrong, I want to make sure to clarify. So the Gemara gave a number of lessons from each letter or word. The first one was lakicha, lokachtem, plural. That we learned that every person has to do it. And I mentioned not a bezdin, it's not an obligation on bezdin. Every person has to shake lulav. You can't be mitzi someone. Each person does it themselves. You have to fulfill the mitzvah yourself. Every person. That's lekachtem. Lachem meant can't be stolen, can't be borrowed. It has to be yours. Then we've talked about that. Then it says bayoim. Now bayoim means even b'Shabbos. Now what is the lesson of bayoim? So bayoim, it could have gotten away with just said barishon on the first day. It doesn't have to say bayoim barishon. It say barishon. So bayoim is extra. So the word bayoim teaches you that even if it's Shabbos. Now, so that is an extra word bayoim. Now rishon teaches you even outside of Israel. Even outside of the Beis Hamikdash, even outside of the Beis Hamikdash, the Rishon, it says, now that's not an extra word, Rishon. That's the word that's not extra. It's just telling you that. I'm not sure if I might have said that about Bayoim, and I wanted to clarify. Bayoim is extra. The word Bayoim is extra. That teaches you even Shabbos. The Rishon word is not extra. The Gemara, the Brisa, uses it and just says, Rishon teaches you even Gvulin. That doesn't mean because it's an extra word. It just means automatic. If you're permitted to, or you're obligated to shake the lulav, it obviously is including the the location. Anywhere. It's a mitzvah to do this. So it doesn't, it's not an extra word. It's lakachtem b'yoim rishon, and doesn't exclude the base. It doesn't exclude anywhere besides the base of Mikdash. So it would imply you're a Jew, you got to do it. It doesn't matter where you live. You're going to be obligated. So again, the rishon word was not really extra, but it's automatic. It's like, obviously you're going to be obligated. And then harishon is an extra letter hey that taught us that what's doicha Shabbos is only the first day and not the other days. That the first day, again, we're talking about the machshirei milah, the way the Gemara now explained this brisa. This was the brisa. I just clarified the brisa again. The brisa is talking about the machshirei milah. In the machshirei milah, according to Rabbi Eliezer, the way he's the source of this brisa, he's basically saying you're allowed to do machshirei milah on Shabbos, even though you're transgressing laws of Shabbos laws. He permits it. Why? He says, because you have that extra word, bayoim. Bayoim overrides Shabbos. It's not talking about shaking the lulav. There's no transgression there. But even the transgressions of preparing the lulav, that's what's doicha. So that's what bayoim is teaching you. And that applies on the first day of Sukkot. That on the first day of Sukkot, we can transgress Shabbos in order to do the mitzvah of lulav. You can cut the lulav from the tree. You can tie the lulav. If you hold the lulav tzarech eged, you need to tie it. Tie it. It's fine. Or if there's a inyan to machshira, these are preparations for the lulav. You'd be allowed to do them because the Torah permits it. It says bayoim afilu b'Shabbos. Okay. Now, what about the rabbis? The rabbis don't agree with this. This is Rabbi Eliezer's opinion. He talks about it about Milah. He talks about it here in Lulav. But what's the reason? So he says because it says Bayom. So what do the rabbis do with the word Bayoim? They could have skipped out that word. That word is extra. The word Bayoim is extra. So the Gemara says, Rabbanan, hi Bayoim, I obdile. What do the rabbis do with the word Bayoim? So the Gemara says, Bayoim, Veloy, Balayim. Rabbis learn to teach us that the mitzvah of Lulav applies during the day and not at night. In other words, what does day really mean? Day doesn't always exclude night. Day means a certain day, like day of the month, day of the week, a day of the month, which includes a day and a night, So sometimes the word day, but other times it means the daytime. The time of the day is day, So in other words, the term day could mean both options. So the fact that it adds this word in an extra, that it's extra, so it's teaching you that it's bayoim v'loy balayla. Why does it add it? It could have just left it out. It says it to tell you something that you wouldn't have understood. You would have thought you have to do it all day. No, bayoim, only by the daytime and not by the night. Now, so that's what the rabbis do. So otherwise, you would think that the mitzvah of lulav would be at night as well. Now, Rabbi Eliezer bayom v'lo b'layla minali. So how does Rabbi Eliezer know about by day and not by night? How does he know that the mitzvah of lulav is only by day? He uses bayom to teach you about the fact that it overrides Shabbos. Even the preparations for the lulav override Shabbos. So according to Rabbi Eliezer, how does he know the concept that it's only by day and you don't shake lulav at night? So Nafkalei Misei for the Korah, he learns it from the end of the pasuk. And the fact that it says at the end of the pasuk, you should rejoice before Hashem Shivas Yamim, 7 days, and the understanding is Yamim Veloy Leilois, and that specifically means days and not nights. It says Shivas Yamim, 7 days, and the understanding is that it's specifically days. So he doesn't learn it from the first time where it says Bayoim. He uses it from the end of the pasuk where it says Yamim, Shivas Yamim. So Rabbani Mehozam Avamina Leilof Yamim Misukkah. So the rabbis say you can't learn it from Yamim, because Yamim, it also says by Sukkah that it says Basukas Teshu Shivas Yamim. So a sukkah you have to sit at night. So then if you're gonna learn it from Yamim, you might learn from that you have to shake lulav at night. Halon Yamim Veluleilos, it says Yamim, Shivas Yamim, 7 days. And that word days is not to exclude nights, it actually includes nights. And so that time where it says days, it means 24-hour days, not just the daytime of day. And so maybe you're going to learn lulav from that, from sukkah. So therefore, malan yamim vafilu leilos, afkan nami yamim vafilu leilos. Now also it means that when it says that here also by lulav, not only by sukkah, but here also by lulav, that it's yamim, even in yamim includes even nights. And so therefore the rabbis say we have to learn it from bayom, because bayom was an extra word. And from there we see that the mitzvah of lulav is specifically daytime and not nighttime. So that's how the rabbis learn. Rabbi Eliezer seems to be comfortable learning from the fact that it says usmachtem, that from the that how does he know that it's you don't shake the lulav at night? Usmachtem l'fnei Hashem l'keichem shivas yamim. The fact that it says yamim, we learn yamim b'leilos. The rabbis say no, that yamim sounds like sukkah. So sukkah you do at night also. It says yamim. So therefore the rabbis learn it from bayom. Rabbi Eliezer doesn't seem to be worried about that. He learns it from Shivas Yamim, from the word Yamim. Now, so the Gemara says, "V'sukkah gufa b'nolan." How do we know that sukkah? We're taking it for granted that sukkah applies only at night. Even at night. Sukkah applies even at. How do we know that? Maybe we had our assumption. What's the source of that? So the Gemara says, "Tanu Rabbanan," because it was taught in the Brisa. The sukkah station Shivas Yamim. On Sukkahs, they should dwell 7 days. Yamim vafilu leilos, it means even nights. I'm talking about Yamim vafilu leilos. You're saying it means even nights. Yamim v'leilos, maybe it means days and not nights, because it says Yamim. Again, we could learn both ways. Yamim sometimes means full 24-hour days. Sometimes it means days and not nights. So maybe it means Yamim v'leilos, maybe it means exclude nights. So v'dinhu, and it would also make sense. Sharikan, by Sukkah, it says Yamim, v'never b'lulav Yamim. It says by lulav Yamim. Mal halon Yamim v'lay layla. It's just like over there. The rabbis understood from the fact that it says Yamim to exclude nights. So Afkan, right? In other words, just like we learned before that by Yom v'lay b'layla. So he says just like over there. It could mean by day, not by night. So Afkan Yamim v'lay leilos. So here also by Sukkah, maybe it means Yamim and not nights. In other words, just like over there by Yom and Yom v'laylo, by day and not by night. So here also maybe it means Yamim and not nights. By Sukkah also, just like lulav, it means by day and not by night. So maybe by Sukkah also. So the Gemara says, or go and look at it from another angle. Namar Khan, go and understand it and learn it from another angle. Namar Khan Yamim, Namar B'Meluim Yamim. It says here, by Sukkah Yamim. It says by the Shivas Yamei Hamaluim, which we just finished celebrating, so to speak. The 7 days of inauguration of the Mishkan took place right before Nissan. We just started the month of Nissan. So for the last 7 days, there was the inauguration, the 7 days of inauguration of the Mishkan. So what does it say about the during those 7 days? Those 7 days of initiating the Mishkan, it says Pesach Oyel Moyed Teshu Yamim B'Layla, that the that Aaron and his kids had to stay in the Mishkan day and night. So we could learn it from the Mishkan. Nemar Khan Yamim, it says by Sukkah Yamim. V'nemar b'miluim, it says by the Miluim that they have to dwell there day and night. It says by the Miluim Yamim. Nemar Khan Yamim, Nemar b'miluim Yamim. Mala Halan, just like over there, by the Miluim. It talks about they're supposed to stay there in the Mishkan for those 7 days. Yamim. Filo Leilos, it means even at night. Afkan Yamim Filo Leilos. Here also it means even at night. So that is the Gemara's. That's the Brisa's question. That maybe we should learn it from the Miluim. So we have like a Gzeira Shava. So on the one hand, we could learn it from Lulav, that it's only by day and not by night. And then Sukkah, you wouldn't have to eat at night. Or you could learn Sukkah from Miluim, that it would apply at night as well, just like the Miluim applied at night, that they had to stay in the Mishkan even at night. So the Gemara says, who is it similar to? What case should we compare Sukkah to? Should we compare it to the Lulav, or should we compare it to the Miluim? So the Gemara says, "Danin davar shemetzvase kol hayoim." We learn it from something that the mitzvah is all day, just like Sukkah. Midavar shemetzvase kol hayoim. I'm sorry, Sukkah is all day, so we learn it from another mitzvah that is also all day. Which one is all day? Midavar shemetzvase kol hayoim. Is Lulav all day or is Miluim all day? So it says, we learn it from something that the mitzvah is all day. That would be the mitzvah of the Miluim. Don't learn it. Don't learn the law of Sukkah from something that only applies for one moment, like from Lulav. That Lulav only applies by day. You're going to say, oh, so Sukkah should be the same. No. Sukkah is a mitzvah all day. So if it's a mitzvah all day, it's similar to the Miluim, and then the law would be that even at night would be a mitzvah. Or maybe go and learn it in this direction. Done in davar shemitzvasai l'dairais, we should learn Sukkah, which applies for generation, from something that applies for generations, like the mitzvah, mitzvah of Lulav applies for all future generations. But why? But don't learn it from Miluim, because you don't learn it from the Miluim, because that doesn't apply, doesn't have long-term application. It was a one-time thing. They inaugurated the Mishkan, the Shivas Yimei Miluim, the 7 days before Rosh Chodesh Nissan, the end of Adar. So that's not Noiglo Dairis. It's not something that applies in the future, and therefore we don't have an answer yet. Talmud Loimar. So the pasuk comes and tells us, and now we turn the page. We're on page 43b. Teishvu l'gzeira shava. So we learn gzeira shava, which is 2 words that it says in each place, and we learn that Nemar Kan in Sukkah it says Teishvu, and Nemar b'miluim it says by Miluim Teishvu. It says over there Pesach al Moed Teishvu Shivas Yom, that they should stay there for 7 days. So Mala Halo and Yomim Bafilu, let's just look over there when it says days, it means nights as well. Afkan Yomim Bafilu Leilois. I mean, it's here also. It's Afkan Yomim here also. It says Yomim days, and it means 24-hour days. It means nights as well. So that's the conclusion, that this mitzvah of Sukkah applies at night as well. So what we concluded over here was that Rabbi Eliezer learn from the word bayoim to teach us that you can be doicha Shabbos. You can push away Shabbos just to fix a lulav, to fix up a lulav, to prepare a lulav. The preparations for the lulav could override Shabbos. It says bayoim. Even on Shabbos, even the machshirim, even the preparations of the lulav. That was Rabbi Eliezer's lesson. And the rabbis say, you know why it has to say bayoim, by lulav, because we need it to say bayom, because lulav is not supposed to be at night. So that teaches us that it's by day and not by night. And then the rabbis said, what is it? Then the Gemara said, so what about Rabbi Eliezer? How does he know that? So he knows that it's by day and not by night, the mitzvah of lulav, because at the end of the pasuk is yom b'lei leilos. The rabbi said no, that yomim is if you learn it from yomim, you're going to end up learning that just like Sukkah is at night, also lulav is at night. Therefore, we can't learn from yomim, but we can learn from bayoim. If you learn from yomim, then you're going to end up learning like yomim that you learn from. You're going to end up learning from Sukkah that it should be even at night. So that was the conclusion of the previous Gemara. Then the Gemara said, "How do we know Sukkah really is not at night? Is at night as well? How do we know Sukkah is at night as well?" And that we had a whole bryce over here that kept going back and forth. What was the back and forth? Well, on the one hand, it says yamim, but what does yamim mean? So yamim could mean, it says Sukkah is Teshu Shevas yamim. So how do we know Sukkah is at night as well? So it says yamim. So simple meaning is yamim means even at night, but maybe not. Maybe yamim is excluding night. Maybe it means day, specifically day. And you have different reasons to say each way. Because on the one hand, lulav, also it says bayoim, and we learn that it means only by day. So maybe this yamim of Sukkah should also only be by day. Or on the other hand, maybe we should learn from the Meluim that it means even at night. And which one is it more similar to? So, well, on the one hand, it's more similar to the Meluim because it was a mitzvah all day, and lulav is a one-time mitzvah. So therefore, Sukkah should be similar to Meluim because both of those applied all day long. On the other hand, Meluim was a one-time event, and lulav is noiheg l'dairais, is a mitzvah l'dairais. So it's a everlasting. So which one do you learn from? So the Gemara concluded, you know what? We have a Gzeir Shava that you learn from Meluim. That just like Meluim is by day and by night, also Sukkah is by day and by night. So that really concludes this little piece of Gemara. We're up to Arava on the page 43b. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Sei gesund.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Take care.